This is Jonathan Lane from Fan Film Factor, and today I'm here with Mr. Greg Mitchell, who has worked on a number of Vance Major's CONSTAR Chronicles fan films. You have been an actor in them. You've been a writer and a director, even. So first of all, Greg, welcome to Fan Film Factor.
Thank you for having me.
So where are you based? Where do you live?
I'm in Northeast Arkansas.
Northeast Arkansas. It seems there's a lot of people in fan films who are in the northern half of Arkansas.
That's what it seems like, yeah.
We've got, obviously, Glenn Rolfe and Dan Reynolds of Warp 66 Studios. We've got Josh Irwin and Victoria Fox of the Avalon fan series. And, of course, they're working on Interlude, as is my composer, Kevin Croxton, who also did the Bunny Incident. Man, so it seems like everybody's in Arkansas. What is it with Arkansas, by the way?
I don't know. I'm relatively new to the fan and film community, so I'm kind of just as surprised as you are. There's so much going on in Arkansas.
Yeah, there must be something in the water. So you are fairly new to the fan and film community. Why don't you talk about, just for a little bit, how did you get into fan films?
Since 1998, I've been doing my own kind of home movie series. Not Star Trek, totally unrelated. I grew up as a horror movie fan, a monster movie fan. So I've had this long-running series of homemade monster movies that I just do with my friends and now my kids and my wife. And my publisher at the time, Grace Bridges, she is based in New Zealand. But in about 2014, she came stateside and she would take a little trip to see all the different people that she published. And she came and stayed with us for a couple days and saw these movies and thought they were awesome and was really excited. And she's like, I want to do one. I was like, okay. She's only going to be here for like 2 days, mind you. I was like, okay. I mean, I work fast, but that's really fast. And she was a huge Star Trek fan, so she's like, let's do a Star Trek movie. And I'm like, okay. So we knocked out Star Trek Splashdown, that's now part of the CONSTAR Chronicles. We knocked that out, I mean, like in 2 days. Like, we stayed up late one night and talked about it. We were filming all day the next day. We were editing, like, into the evening and the morning of the next day. I mean, it was like we were moving fast because she was leaving, and she kind of wanted to have something to take with her to show her other authors and, like, look at this fun thing we did at Greg's house. That was kind of my first exposure, and I didn't think anything of it after that because we don't show – it's kind of like a long-standing rule that we don't show our movies. We just make them for us. It's just for fun. You know, but it doesn't go up on YouTube or anything. So I just kind of thought that was the end of it. And then it was probably, well, it was last year that I had kind of reached the end of some of my other storylines, and I was just thinking, what could I do next in the series? And I remembered that Star Trek movie, and I thought, oh, man, I kind of want to go back to that a little bit. Star Trek Continues had come out, and I really, really liked it. I was really excited about it, their attention to detail and just the passion they had for it. And I was like, man, I actually kind of accidentally made a Star Trek fan film once. So it gave me this, I don't know, I just kind of felt like, I don't know, maybe I should go back to that. And it was actually your blog that I was looking at one day, and you had done an interview with Vance, and I went and checked out some of his stuff, and probably like a lot of people, I had seen like the big budget fan film productions, and I thought, well, I can't compete with that. I don't have big CGI, I don't have costumes, you know, I don't have all that. And I felt really like, no, I can't do that. But then I watched Vance, and it was like, whoa, I could actually do this. Like, I recognize what he's doing when I was doing my movies. So I reached out to Vance, and it started simple. I was just like, hey, could I be in one of yours? And then that led to editing that one, and it led to writing others and directing others and starring in others, and it went big.
So when was that? When did you first get in touch with Vance?
June.
of last year, of 2019?
Yeah.
My goodness.
Yeah.
Granted, Vance has done a lot of stuff. For those that don't know, Vance released, I think, 51 new episodes of the CONSTAR Chronicles,
Right.
of which, 3 of them were yours, Splashdown, as you mentioned, All Roads Lead to Home, and Smoke and Mirrors. I don't think you actually directed that one. I think you just did the editing for that one, right?
Well, yeah, I guess it's kind of a co-directing in the sense that Vance had the idea for Smoke and Mirrors that our characters would share the screen together, but he's obviously over there and I'm over here. So we had to kind of like co-direct in planning the shots to make it seem more like we're in the same space. So I guess you could say on my half of things, I helped directing on that side, and he directed his side, obviously.
Well, it's pretty cool. I mean, you went from 0 to 60 pretty darn quickly.
Yeah.
Before I forget to ask you, though, because I want to dive a little deeper into what you ended up doing for these fan films, but you mentioned your publisher. And I know that for the fan films that you did, it is a production of Splashdown books, which I never quite understood because it's a fan film, it's not a book. So could you talk a little bit about that part of your life that you haven't necessarily talked about yet? It sounds like you are an author.
Yes. I am an author and a screenwriter. I've written some movies. I wrote a Christian movie called Amazing Love, The Story of Hosea, that stars Sean Astin from Lord of the Rings. And I wrote 2 movies for the Sci-Fi Channel as part of their sharksploitation genre, and I helped develop 2 more movies for them. So, and then I've written books. I lose track. It's probably 9 or 10 books. And
wow,
yeah,
I mean, like real books published by a publisher books, huh?
Yes, some yes. I've had books published by bigger mainstream traditional publishers. I've had books published by small press publishers, and then I've done some myself. So yeah, I've kind of run the gamut on that.
And are they mostly Christian type books, or sci-fi books, or horror books,
yes,
or a mix of all sorts of things?
Yeah, yes to both. They're primarily horror and/or science fiction, and they do have a faith element in them, some more overtly than others. But I think any writer, their beliefs shape their writing. It always comes out whether they intend it to or not. So it's definitely coming from my experiences and my beliefs and my worldview. But largely, I try to just make it, it's about monsters and crossing dimensional barriers and all kinds of crazy things.
All good sci-fi tropes.
Yeah.
All right, so you reached out to Vance, and he said, sure, plenty of room in the pool, jump on it.
Mm-hmm.
And then what happened next?
Well, that was what was great about Vance, was that in the interview I think he did with you, he was talking about that he just didn't turn anyone away. It's like if you wanted to be in it, he would find a place for you to be in it.
Absolutely.
And that was just really exciting to me, that he wasn't going to let things like, oh, I don't have the right suit. It's like, it's okay. We'll figure out how to make it work. and that's all it was going to be. I was just like, hey, I don't have a uniform, but I got this character that we did for this movie, and his name was Commander Mitchell. Not entirely original, but that was all that I had. And I said, hey, it'd just be cool to just show up in your movie. He's like, yeah, that'd be great. And so we called and talked about it. He was working on Scribbler at the time. And he said, yeah, we can put you in there. I was like, well, great. He says, by the way, do you want to edit it too? And I was like, well, sure, because I've been editing my stuff, since 98. So I was like, yeah, that's fine. And then it just kind of snowballed from there. We did that, and he really liked what I turned in for the Scribbler, and then the character of Commander Mitchell grew and kept showing up, and it was really exciting.
Now, let me ask you a question, because I don't usually talk to editors that often.
Mm-hmm.
What is the editor process, the editing process for you? So, Vance and you worked on your first fan film was The Scribbler with him, right?
Mm-hmm.
So it was shot. Obviously, Vance was the one who directed that one. When did you come in, and what did you do, and in what order in terms of editing?
Well, by the time I came in, he'd had most of it already shot. I had to shoot my scene that he kind of wrote when he decided that I was going to come in. And he just kind of gave me all the footage that he had. and an idea of what goes where and, the script of it. And then it's just kind of sifting through it and feeling the rhythm of the conversations, and that's the timing of it. It's trying to find the rhythm in a dialogue scene of two people who aren't sharing the same space, who film their scenes miles apart and weeks apart, and you have to make it seem like they're really talking to each other. So that's something that I have gotten better at. That's not something that I naturally could do. That took years of practice of making a conversation sound natural. But that's really what I have focused on in doing stuff for Vance, making the conversation sound natural between the characters.
Now, keep in mind, you're talking to a whole bunch of people who probably have never edited before. So when you say getting a feel for the conversation and making the conversation feel natural, literally what is involved in that? So it sounds like the first step is you watch all the footage, obviously. Mm-hmm. And I'm guessing there's multiple takes of each line.
Sometimes, yes.
And sometimes no.
Sometimes no.
Okay. So I guess the first thing you do is like if there's only one take of something, you're using it.
Right.
And if there's multiple takes, so I'm guessing what your next step is, if you've got multiple takes, is to sort of figure out which is the best of the ones to use?
Right. The ones that, I don't know, it's hard to explain. It's a feeling. It's like there's some takes that an actor will deliver a line a certain way, and it clicks better. It feels more natural, or it has more emotion behind it. And a lot of things in the movies that I've done for Vance, if you notice, in the conversations, there's cutaway reaction shots to people listening to when someone else is talking, and I don't always see that. I see a lot of the shot is on character A while they're talking, and then on character B while they're talking, and back to A and back to B. But the actors, whether they mean to or not, there's pauses as they're either thinking about what their next line is, or they're trying to find, get to the right headspace, deliver a line. And those are perfect moments to splice in as reaction shots. To me, that makes it feel like the characters are in the same space and that a character is speaking, but you see this other character listening or nodding or responding, and it keeps it alive to me.
Yeah, because I have noticed sometimes there's a difference between the editor who just makes this person's talking, back and forth, and the reaction shots. Now, do you usually have reaction shots if they shot that footage to give you, or are you simply just taking outtakes of, while they're
It's primarily outtakes. It's primarily outtakes. There's been a couple times once I started working with Vance, I was like, look, I just need shots of just nodding, of pensive listening and that kind of thing, and that helps, but really it's just been outtakes.
So once you have that, so you map it out, do you actually write down on a piece of paper, we're using this take of this shot and then this take of this shot, or are you just assembling it in your editing program, and also which editing program are you using?
I use Adobe Premiere Pro, and that's kind of got like a free-floating timeline. I mean, you can just drop a clip anywhere in the clip, your workspace. I don't write it down. I just I'll drop the clip in one after another and just listen to it again and again. In some situations, you can cut the dialogue like right as they finish talking, and that creates an effect. But then if you let the dialogue linger or the silence linger after the dialogue, that creates a different effect. So it's a bunch of just experimentation and just listening to it. And when I do a Vance movie, I try and put like music underneath the dialogue scene to give it that extra level of emotion, to kind of help inform the audience what we're going for here. Like, is this a funny scene? Is this an intense scene? Is this a sad scene? And that helps, listening to it with the music underneath it. And you can kind of time out, like, was that too rushed? Do we need longer pauses to indicate the character is thinking about something? So it's just a rhythm. You just listen to it again and again, and it kind of just comes to you.
So we're back to a question of everything's laid out in your timeline. You've got your conversations going on. Is your music in there already, or do you lay out all of the talking stuff first and then put the music in afterwards? Or do you kind of go back and forth and back and forth?
Music's usually about the last thing that I put in there. But you, or I say you, I mean, it might just be me doing this, but
the royal you.
Yeah, but you get the rough footage in there, and you think that a scene is going to go a certain way, but then you put the right music in, and to me, I mean, it even changes the meaning to me. Like, oh, I didn't realize this was that kind of a scene. Then you go back and kind of tighten up the dialogue accordingly to kind of match the music.
And what do you do for levels and such to make sure that your music, because one of the things you notice sometimes on fan films is you'll get some really good music, but it gets very, very loud while the people are talking. Are you aware of those levels? Are you trying to keep people not talking over the higher levels of music volume-wise? Or are you lowering the music level? Are you raising the, level of the speech? What do you do in that way?
Yeah, it's a combination of all of that. That is something that I'm very aware of because in my earlier films that I did just for myself, I didn't know about stuff like that. So, yeah, you put in a song, and it would blow out everything that you had going on in the scene. So it's just a constant dance of trying to adjust the levels. And it's not just adjust the music straight across. It's quieter in this line, it's higher in this line, and just back and forth. And you adjust your dialogue, and you're trying to hit just right. Because, even the quality of the footage is not always such that you can hear perfectly what someone's saying all the time. So you're constantly trying to make it the best you can make it for what you have. So, yeah, it's a process, but I'm definitely aware of it.
I've heard that editing is definitely for people who are obsessive-compulsive.
Oh, my wife sees me sometimes, and she's like, I don't know how you can sit there and do that, because it's hours of just rocking 2 frames back and forth, just obsessing over these little details. So, yeah.
I actually obsess over these interviews. People don't necessarily know this, but when I do an audio interview with any of you fan filmmakers, I then go through it and I edit out things like I just did there. You didn't know, but I just took an out. And I will work sometimes for hours and hours. And there's sometimes where I or the person I'm interviewing says the same word twice. I'm doing something like, and I will take out one of those I'ms, or I will take out one of those knows, or both of those knows. And sometimes you have to be careful when you take out one of those I'ms or one of those twos or whatever, the word is spoken twice because the first word doesn't lead into the rest of it. So you have to sometimes take out the second word, or sometimes you have to take out the first word, and sometimes it doesn't work if you take out either one of those words because it just doesn't match what's coming later. So in those cases, what I'll sometimes do is I will cut, like let's say the word is to, I will cut it through the t. And if somebody says to twice, I'll leave the t in from the first two and the oo from the second two, and I'll eliminate the stuff between them.
Right.
And it flows very nicely. There's a lot of work that goes into there. So if I'm not wearing my headphones, my earbuds, my wife, who might be working in the other room, will yell into me to put my headphones on because hearing me saying the same thing, or whoever I'm interviewing saying the same thing over and over and over, drives her crazy.
Right.
And yet, for me, I will be listening to these things 10, 12, 15 times until they're right.
Right. And it's the same way with the films, too. But then the problem is to make sure that you're looking at something else to cover the audio, right? Because, like, if you're splicing 2 different takes, the frame's going to jump. The image is going to jump. That's when you cut away to a reaction shot of a different character. So underneath that visual, you can splice the audio to make it smoother.
Yeah, lots of different possibilities there. And, and of course you can also, if you absolutely positively have to, you can try to throw another word in from a better take or whatever if they slur a word, if their lips sync.
You got all you got, and you just go with it, yeah.
Just go with it. Hey, there's no fan film police that are going to arrest you if you did something wrong. But yeah, I know about editing. Obviously, I don't edit video nearly as much, and I know there's so many other things you have to worry about. But I also know that there's a lot of folks that haven't really edited at all. So there's a lot of aspects of what you do as an editor that they're not aware of. And one of the things that I'm aware of is how important an editor is to a successful film.
Yes.
Because if you have a bad editor, even the best script and the best directing can be ruined by a bad editor, and sometimes really bad acting or bad directing or a bad script can be saved by a good editor. Do you agree with that?
Yes, absolutely. Well, they say that a film is made 3 times. It's made when you write it, it's made when you film it, and then it's made when you edit it. And you're completely remaking the movie when you edit it. You can change the meaning of a scene. You can change an actor's performance for good or for ill, depending on how you are, But the editing is very, very, very important.
Yeah, so everybody, let's give a round of applause to the editors out there, because they don't usually get as much credit in fan films as they should, at least when the fan films are, very successful. I like to say that, Rob Burnett, for Prelude to Axanar, is the reason that Prelude was so good. I mean, I know that Christian did a very good directing job, Christian Gossett. And, I know that the acting performances were spectacular. But I also know that the script as originally written wasn't as interesting or compelling as the final edit brought it out. And Alec Peters is the first person to acknowledge that Rob really did a spectacular job editing, an absolutely incredible fan film. And you can sort of tell when the editing job has been done well. And you can also tell when, somebody just basically went into iMovie or whatever and, stitched these scenes together and put in transitions or whatever like that.
Well, I mean, I think it's probably the goal of most editors to kind of be invisible. It's like a magic trick. If you can see the strings and see how it's done, it takes away some of the special quality of it. So to some degree, you want to be invisible, and you don't want people to notice that it was a good editing job, that they're just so engrossed in the film that they don't, it's like, oh, I see that cut you made there, it's like they don't see that. They just see the magic trick,
Yeah, it's funny. I watch for editing, but I realize that most people don't. My wife and I will sometimes be watching something, and I will notice an edit, especially on reality TV, where they try to make it look like reality. It's like, did you notice that glass over there is
you look at the continuity in the shot. It's like, that's not, like their hands here in this shot, and it's here in this, the next cut. Yeah.
Yeah, I remember once very, very long ago, there was, I think it was like one of those Bachelor or whatever, there was this scene where the Bachelor drives his car directly into the water, and of course the woman is getting splashed. She's like, "Oh, what are you doing driving your car into the water?" And of course the car turns into a boat. That's this like really cool, James Bondish crap or whatever that they did. And, all I'm doing is I'm watching the fact that when they start driving into the water, it's about maybe an hour or two before sunset. And when she reacts to the fact that they're in the water and the car turns into the boat, it's like dusk.
Yeah. Yeah.
Yeah, about 3 hours passed between the time you started driving in the water and the next shot.
Yeah. I always want to film at twilight because, it's the magic hour. It's like the light's perfect, but you got about 15 minutes to get it, and sometimes you just don't. So, yeah, that's always tricky shooting. That's why the movies I did for sci-fi, I would write down in the script, I'd be like, okay, this takes place at dusk, this takes place at, sundown, whatever. And they're like, no, it's either day or it's night because we can't bank on...
Get an hour to film it at what they call the magic hour. For those people who are not photographers, by the way, or cinematic people, so the magic hour is that time where the sun gets so low in the sky that the shadows are really long. And the long light is amazing because it can trace the contours of faces and the sides of rocks. And if you're a photographer and you have good sunlight as it's going down, the magic hour is the best time to film. Whereas, noon, not so much unless you're at the Grand Prix.
Right. And very dynamic, when the sun's going down and the sky is all pink and purple and orange and it's fading into blue, and that's great.
It's amazing. But unfortunately, you have to be in the right place at the right time. I do a lot of hiking and nature photography, and I plan my hikes specifically to be at certain places at sunset. And, sometimes I'm there and sometimes I'm not. But it's one of those things where sometimes you're just lucky, and sometimes you do have to plan your luck. And I remember one of the most famous Hollywood stories of the magic hour and the magic light was when they were filming Titanic. And there was that scene where Leonardo DiCaprio and Kate Winslet were on the front of the ship, and there was that beautiful sunset. And they had it all set up to film, but it was an overcast day. I mean, it was cloudy, it was gray, the light was awful, and they were thinking, okay, we're not going to get that shot, which is unfortunate because the actual story of the Titanic, the night that they sank, there was this amazing sunset. The survivors talked about how their last sunset was just incredible. They wanted that for the movie, but it was just a gray, awful day. And one of the things about sunsets is that even if it's a gray day, sometimes the sun, after it sets and it goes under the clouds, it lights them from below. And you get the most incredible orange-red sunsets with this underlight, and that's what happened. But because the sun was at this point at the horizon going down, they had like literally 8 minutes to get this shot, and they got Leonardo and Kate in the right spot in the front of the ship in the bow, and they got all the cameras rolling, and they pretty much just had one chance to get it. So, there was Kate spreading her arms and Leonardo behind her, and the motion camera was going around, and the sky just turned brilliant orange, and they shot for those 8 minutes, and they got the footage they needed, and they were done. And if I remember correctly, that was like the only day of filming that they were out there that there was any kind of sunset. And it was just a testament to how in Hollywood you have to be ready for that magic hour shot, because sometimes you only have like 8 minutes to get it.
When it storms and it's all gross during the day, that usually makes the best sundown, It always makes for the most dramatic clouds in the sky and the colors, and yeah.
So now that we've talked about photography and the magic hour for so long, let's get back to fan films. Okay, so now as far as editing goes, have you just been self-taught in terms of editing? Have you ever taken any classes on it or watched videos on how to do it?
No, it's just been trial and error, doing them all these years and starting off really rough, and it's just been self-taught on that end.
You look at what you've done and you just think, okay, I could do this better next time, and the next time.
Oh, yeah. Every movie you do, you hope it's better than the last one, but not as good as the one you're going to do next,
So how many movies and films at this point would you say that you've edited?
In my own little mythology that I have over here, we've got, upwards of 30 movies, I guess, that I've done over the years. For Vance, 6 or 7, I think. And even just starting with Vance, I learned a lot that I've put into my own stuff. The different video that he gives me, like, because he shoots on his phone, and I had never thought of that. So it's like in working with green screen, I never worked on that before in my own movies. So it's been a learning process on that. He uses so much different material than I use, and it's really taught me a lot, and I think, hopefully, I don't know if everyone else agrees, but I think it's helped me improve.
Well, cool. And are you planning on doing more Star Trek fan films as we go into the future?
Yeah, that's the plan. Me and Vance have already talked about upcoming things we'd like to do, and I'm going to get to go. The plan is to go with him to film at Warp. I'm pretty excited about that.
Yeah, you've been there already, right?
I've not been there, no.
You haven't been there?
Going through my head.
Because I was going through my head, and I was trying to remember if I had seen you on the sets at any point, your character, Mitchell. So, yeah, you haven't been there, huh?
Nope. I'm pretty excited.
I haven't been there yet either, actually, even though my interlude crew was just there recently filming our sick bay scene. But, unfortunately, I can't afford a trip to Arkansas for, 3 hours of filming. And it's probably good that I didn't go because apparently there were, thunderstorms and tornadoes on the day that I would have landed.
Well, I think it's like 3.5 hours drive for me, so that's actually really good. So.
Yeah, it's funny when you say 3 or 3.5 hours, that's actually pretty good. I'm thinking, yeah, that's a 7 hours round trip, but, to stand on the bridge, that's...
yeah.
So let's transition then from editing to directing? Because obviously you directed Splashdown, which you had done that before you ever met Vance. And then Vance then had you direct All Roads Lead to Home. And so how did you approach that as a director? What was your process?
Well, like I said, on Splashdown, I'd done that years ago, and I had not intended on showing that, but the more we started incorporating the character into Vance's other movies, we both talked about it, and it's like, it's hard to have this character and not show the thing that introduced the character. So it was really Vance kind of pushing me like, hey, maybe you should just like show that movie and put that one out there. So we shot an extra scene for that of me and Vance having a conversation in that scene. As far as All Roads Lead to Home, that was actually my idea on that one. I binge-watched like all of his movies when we first started talking. We were on vacation, and I spent like the whole evening in the hotel room on my phone just like watching every CONSTAR movie that he sent me. I mean, it was fascinating, all the different characters and the mythology, and it was so intricate and interconnected, and I loved it.
I call it a tapestry.
Yeah, I love it. On a side note, that's something that really excites me about fan films is seeing all the different filmmakers cooperating and collaborating, and you have all these different characters from different series crossing over with each other. I love that.
Yeah, the crossovers are fun.
I think that's so neat to have this expanded universe of characters. But as I was watching through there, I saw the character of Janessa Mitchell from The Situation Room. And she was like just cool. She was talking about parallel dimensions and she came from an alternate future. And I was like, that's my stuff. I'm all about that. and we were talking, me and Vance, and I was like, so her name's Mitchell. My character's name is Mitchell. And he's like, oh yeah, I already got this figured out. Like, what if you're related to her and all this? And as he was telling it to me, I said, well, I have to write that story. You may not know this, but Vance has these long, detailed biographies of almost all of his characters. That doesn't always make it to the screen, but he's got it in his head, all these histories. And he told me the one for Janessa, and it was awesome. And I was like, why is that not a movie? So I said, I want to write that movie that gets that information out there. So he pretty much just let me go. I wrote the script, and I let him read it, and he was really excited about it, and he liked it. And I just filmed it entirely over here. And he just kind of got to experience as a fan, and he didn't really want to see it. It was done. So I finished it and let him see it, and he really liked it. So
he wasn't like looking over your shoulder or doing anything
No,
like that.
No,
he's not a helicopter director or anything like that, or helicopter.
No.
Okay.
He's never been like that in our working relationship. He's always been very, very trusting, very giving, and just kind of let you do your things.
So you wrote the episode. Obviously, you put a lot of yourself into that, and then it came time to direct. What did you prepare before you yelled action for the first? What had you done to make sure going into that day of filming that everything was going to be the way you wanted it to be?
Well, All Roads Lead to Home is really, I film that just like I film all my movies over here, which is just me. I have no crew. I mean, I have a camera. I have 2 shop lights that I bought like at Lowe's, and it's just me. I'm the cameraman. I'm setting up all the lights. I'm also in the movie. It's all me, for good or for ill. But Vance's movies are very, he does a lot of what, the subspace communications. There's lots of 2 people talking across the computer, you know?
Yeah.
Because that's a very accessible way that anyone can be in his movie. So I wanted to take that kind of idea of just a whole movie of 2 people talking to each other through subspace, but ratchet it up. And the idea of what happens if someone on the other end of this conversation is in mortal danger and the person on the other end can't do anything about it. And that kind of tension of you're just forced to sit here and look at the situation, trying to figure out what can I do to solve this. So pretty much the stuff that I'm in, it's just me at my parents' house. I went over to my parents' house because they got a nicer house than I do. And so if this is going to be seen by the whole world, I want to pick a better house. But I just went over there one night and set the camera up and the lights up and just stayed there until I got it. We had Mary Jane, who plays Janessa. She filmed all of hers on her end, and we didn't communicate on approach or anything. I just sent her the script, and she sent me back this footage, and it was incredible. I was really, really pleased with it.
You weren't actively directing her.
No.
She just gave you the footage.
She gave me the footage. I knew that the movie had a potential to be pretty emotional, but I didn't know what her comfort levels were as an actor. I didn't know what she was used to or what she was prepared to do. So I actually kind of let her take the lead on that, and I just waited to shoot mine until I saw her footage. And her footage was so, like, raw and emotional, and she's, like, crying, and it was really powerful stuff. And I thought, oh, man.
Very impressive there at the end.
Yeah, I was like, oh, we're going there. So I got to, like, rat up my game, and it put me on my toes. But watching her footage informed how I was going to do my scenes.
Now, I am curious about Mary Jane, because I can't tell by her last name, which is, what, Blithestone?
I believe so.
Yeah. What is that accent from?
I don't know. I've not yet met her and talked to her a lot. So that's also supposed to be when we go to work. So I'm excited about that, too.
Yeah, because I'm very intrigued. You know, just ask her from me. It sounds like it might be Spanish from Spain, Spanish, but I'm not sure. It could be Portuguese, and it could be a completely different country that I have no idea about. But it's very interesting to encounter that kind of an exotic character. I'm assuming that folks have watched it. I'm going to say in the blog, please watch the fan films before you listen to this. I'm about to give away a spoiler. And if you don't want to hear the spoiler, just jump ahead 30 seconds. But she's ultimately your daughter, which I sort of saw coming a little bit, but it only hit at a certain point because she had this exotic accent. And I was just thinking to myself, well, his daughter's not going to have an exotic accent because he's her dad. But I'm guessing that, obviously, if you were killed then, you didn't have as much of an effect on
right.
her.
Well, we kind of made a joke in one of the other films. I think it's in, I guess it's in Faith, maybe, or Wonderwall. Maybe it's Wonderwall Part 2 that I edited, and I'm in that one, too. But it talks about my kids, and I say something about, they look just like their mom, you know? So we just wanted to show the mom, and then we'll all just chalk it up to, you know, the mom has a big influence on the kids, and maybe she studied abroad or was stationed abroad for many years. There's always an explanation.
Yeah, it's sci-fi. There's always an explanation.
Right.
But anyway, it had a very good finale there, very exciting. I would say last 5 minutes or so of, the quote-unquote stranger in the house ending. And, obviously a little bit of stunt stuff, but not too much because it's your parents' house. You don't want to make too much of a mess, right?
Right. And I didn't want to, break anything, so, on myself. So, yeah, it's pretty low stunt work, but, yeah.
Yeah, I think there's some people out there who would watch your stuff and say, oh, God, how basic, how amateurish, you're not really throwing. And I don't think those people understand, even for something as seemingly simple as this, this is a 3-character fan film, how much work went into just getting what you got.
Right. I mean, I don't know how long it took the other actors to do their bits at their house, but at our house, it took hours. I mean, it was a whole night. I think I even had to shoot it twice. The first scene with Scott was Zine. That was one day, and then the rest moved another day. But, yeah, it takes hours to do stuff like that. It doesn't have to, but it does when I do it because, A, I have to set the camera and then run into place and act. And you kind of have to go from director to actor in a matter of, 2 seconds.
Yeah, actually, I was surprised you didn't have any crew.
No crew.
Just you and your camera.
Just me and the camera, yeah.
I don't know if you saw the blog where I was talking about the scene that I did for Vance, but he needed me to be in the Phantom because he needed somebody who had a uniform that could wear a black collar under a DS9 uniform. That was the only reason I was hired. It wasn't for my acting ability.
I edited that movie.
Oh, you did? Okay, so you know my scenes. So anyway, he said, yeah, I need you to deliver these 2 lines, probably about, 20 seconds of dialogue or whatever. I need you to deliver these lines, and then just a little camera shake. I'm like, camera shake? Because the only other time I ever did a short sequence for Vance, it was just me in another uniform, staring at the screen because he was talking to me. It was one of those, he's calling up the people on the network, and the network were actually just his friends in the community.
Right.
But there's 4 faces on the screen, so basically I had to just look at the camera like I was listening to Vance for whatever it was, 20, 30 seconds, so I did. And there was one other thing where I tap my comm badge and say, standing by, or hailing frequencies open, or something like that. But that was it, but very easily done. I actually filmed myself against not so much a green screen as a green piece of, cardboard taped up behind me. And I put the camera on a tripod. It's very easy. But he's like, now he wants the camera to shake this time. And I'm like, okay, I don't know how. It's like, if I'm sitting there, maybe I can stick my foot out and try to tap the tripod. It's like, but that's not really going to work.
Yeah.
So ultimately, I have my 9-year-old son, Jaden, who was 8 at the time, and I said, hey, Jaden, how would you like to get a credit on a fan film? And Jaden was all for it. It was, I think, initially more exciting than it turned into because I was having so many flubs of the lines along the way, and he's holding, I have a very, very heavy camera. I mean, it's not a camera phone. It's basically a Lumix, Panasonic Lumix, and it weighs probably about 4 pounds. So when you're a little kid holding that camera up there for 2 or 3 minutes at a time, and poor Jaden he's got it strapped around his neck. He's putting it down. He's shaking his arms. But he was a trooper, and we went over how to shake the camera just a little bit.
Right.
And anyway, eventually we got that. But
it looks good. Tip for the future: I actually can do that just digitally, shake a still image to make it look like it's shaking. But it does look better when it's actually done live on set.
I always think it looks better when it's done live, especially since when you shake it digitally, you actually have to zoom in a little bit.
Right.
Although I actually zoomed in for you. I don't know if you knew that, but, initially Jaden had a wider shot. I always knew I could potentially zoom in, but I was sitting, just in front of my bathroom door. It was closed. And it was such a wide shot that you could really
get a door handle in there?
Well, it wasn't that you could see the door handle. It's a sliding door, but you could see the mirrors on either side, which are closets. And I was just like, okay, so I actually, not knowing who was going to be doing, but the shaking was good, so it's like I can zoom in just a little bit. So I did a little edit in iMovie to make sure that you didn't see too much stuff.
It turned out really well. I like it.
Yeah, that scene actually did turn out really, really well. I may include a link to The Phantom somewhere in the blog just to say, we're going to be talking about The Phantom, so if you want to see that, here's that.
Yeah.
Because I record these before I write the blogs. I record these interviews, and then, when I'm finally ready to post them, I write 300 or 400-word blog to go with it as an introduction. So anyway, it sounds like you're going to still be working with Vance. You're going to be doing more fan films. Are you going to be doing just fan films with Vance, or do you think you're going to be doing some more fan films on your own, of your own characters and your own stories?
I don't know yet. The things that we're talking about for this year would set up the potential to do more by myself with my character and any other characters I want to bring in. So that's a possibility. I wouldn't say no, but I have a lot of different projects going on at any given time. I'm working on different novels and, of course, still doing my own home movie mythology with all the monster stuff with my kids. So, but yeah, I could see myself sitting around and being like, I wonder what he's doing right now, what's going on in that world, and I'm sure I'll come back to it eventually, yeah. So we've got a few planned for this year that I'm excited to see happen.
Yeah, I'm excited to see them too. The thing about Vance's stuff is that, it's proof that you don't need a lot to make a fan film. Basically, all you need is the courage to put yourself out there and the desire and determination, and the love of Star Trek. So my hat is off to you, Greg, and obviously to your wife and your family for putting up with you.
Yeah, those drafted into these. They're all in Splashdown, by the way.
Yeah, I noticed there were kids and Was your wife the star of that, or that was the publisher?
Grace, my publisher, was the star of that one. My wife was the lead tribe guard. Yeah.
Yeah, now I'm putting 3 and 3 together because there was a very, very heavy down under accent. So
right.
But your wife was.
My kids were drafted into that one. They were like, we had to do another one because we frequently do these movies, the home movie stuff. And at that age, now they're kind of into it, and they've come up with their own stories, and they add to the mythology that we've been building all this time. But at that point, in 2014, it was like, oh, gosh, we have to do another movie.
Well, Jaden did think it was really cool to actually see his name in the credits of a fan film. And I think that he's actually the youngest cameraman in a fan film. Obviously, there have been younger actors who've appeared in fan films because there's, been babies that have appeared, but I think he was the youngest cameraman, so that's something he can be proud of.
It's a good distinction.
It's a good distinction. But, we dads want to keep our kids, in the fan film as long as they think, it and we are cool. We don't get that for very long.
Right.
All right. Well, anyway, Greg, thank you very much for a very interesting talk tonight.
Well, thank you for having me.
All right. Well, we will see you soon in some of Vance Major's CONSTAR Continues episodes then.
All right.
Thank you very much.